And away we go. There I am. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wherever you happen to be in the world today, this is Coffee Talk or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, or at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as, you guessed it, Twitter. And then, of course, you can find me on Coffee Talk at fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Excuse me. Come here. Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon, as we get ready to jump into what's going on in the world today and talk about the news and so on and so forth and etc. Isn't that right, Dusty? For those of you who can't see, I've got a cat keeping me company. I've got two actually in here today. And we will be popping into some of the news segments here in a moment. And I do try to read through as many of the comments as is realistic for those of you who are listening and not able to see. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that are joining us in the live portion on YouTube. And I see Helter is here today, Dragon, Keisha, Urban Angst. Rodney is here. He says, another day, another dollar for the tax man. No kidding. Cyberjack Sr. is here. Spectre. No, you're not late. That's right. Legends is here. Fluke Man is here as people are starting to chime in. And we'll get ready to, excuse me, we'll get ready to start jumping into what's going on in the world today. Plenty to talk about, including a little bit of follow-up from yesterday. I don't know if the person who was talking about the line in Saudi Arabia is here today. I do have one of their commercial advertising spots that I will show today. And Fluke Man says, did you get the cat food from Walmart? No, I was not able to make it to the post office on time, but the packages are at the P.O. box, and I'll be going there tomorrow and pick it up. Because yesterday there was way too much going on. And of course, my wife had a family emergency. She was gone for several days, and she came back yesterday, which is why I did the broadcast a little early yesterday. But no, we were not able to go and pick that up yet, but I will be going to the post office in the morning. And Donna is here. John Bell is here. He says, hello from New England, Australia. And Antonios is here from Greece. Wow. Got Australia and Greece and New Zealand is here, because I know that Rodney's in New Zealand. Boogers is here. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll watch later. Well, it'll be here. It will be here. And speaking of Thanksgiving, and that's one of the big things today, we already knew that the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade has been turned into a complete shit show. All right. The last couple of years, and this year especially, they're going like full on for diversity. And it's just not the way it used to be. It used to be just a freaking parade. I'm not a fan of parades anyways. I think they're boring. But the stuff that they've been doing, it's getting worse. As you're about to see here, we'll pop off with that, or we'll start off with that. And Thomas is here. Thanks for joining us today, Thomas. On top of all of the alphabet mafia stuff and the drag queen stuff that they were doing, they're doing Palestinian stuff too, and that's really pissed people off now. Oh, and I see Zane is here. It says land grab day. Yeah, well, I guess you could look at it that way. But there we go. And this article comes from Fox News. So you see Liberation for Palestine and Planet. They had Palestinian, pro-Palestinian stuff in the parade, as well as drag queens and other things. It's not the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade we all grew up with. It says groups of pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City with some chanting and singing, Palestine will be free, while others glued themselves to the street along the parade route. Glued themselves to the street. I thought this was part of the parade, because on the floats, people did have Palestinian flags. One Massachusetts Indian group in particular, and I mean Native Indians, held up Palestinian flags on the float. One group of protesters took to the parade route in Midtown Manhattan and unfurled a banner reading Liberation for Palestine. They called it for an end to fossil fuels while supporting Palestinians in Gaza. Oh my. Make up your mind. The protesters wore white jumpsuits, doused themselves with red liquid, and glued their hands to the street to try to disrupt the parade. The crowd lining the sidewalk could be heard drowning out the chants with boos. New York police officers were seen removing the protesters from the street and taking them away from the scene so that the parade could continue. Now, I think that when these nitwits glue themselves to something, you should leave it. You should leave them there. You should leave them there. And I get this from Massachusetts. I grew up in the Boston area, and in the early '90s, there was a lot of protesting of abortion clinics in that time. And there was a place that was right next to where I worked. I used to work for J. Builder and Sons in Brookline, and there was a clinic next door. It wasn't an abortion clinic, but they were connected to one. And so sometimes people would go out there and protest. And one time the protesters came out and they chained themselves to the chassis of the cars that were parked out in front. And they asked what to do. And the mayor said, leave them there. They got to go to the bathroom sometime. And so the police didn't unhook them, because usually they come with the saws and they buzz the chains off and arrest them and take them away. Guess what? After a few hours, they unhooked it themselves and left. If you left these people glued to the sidewalk, they'd get the message after a while. Armit says nothing like politicizing a parade. No kidding. And Dirk von Franz is here. He says, got a lap buddy. How's the kitties? Kitties are doing good. Kitties are doing good. They ran out of the room, though, because Dusty just took off. Fluke Man says, Thanksgiving, is that to celebrate the first harvest and the help from Indian tribe? Yeah, that's the general idea. Urban says, useful idiots for the M Brotherhood. And I see All People has joined us. Zane says, Native tribes hate Thanksgiving due to the misrepresentation of events. Native tribes hate Thanksgiving because that's what they've been trained to do. No one in the modern era takes advantage of Native Indians more than other Native Indians. And the activists are the worst. They're some of the worst activists on the planet. You want to talk about playing the victim card? Believe me, no one does it better. And they all those casinos and everything else and all the monies, all the proceeds are supposed to go towards the native communities and all this other stuff. Because remember, there's Indian casinos all over the country. They don't help those people. They take advantage of those people more than anyone. Helter says disrupting a parade is stupid and will not help anything. Well, they got booed plenty. Urban says, did you see how the one where animal rights activists chained themselves to moving industrial chicken belt and the workers couldn't get to the shutoff in time? No, I did not hear that. And Dragon says protesting during a parade has nothing to do with what you're protesting about. Doesn't make people more sympathetic to your cause. It makes you annoying. Someone needs to tell them that. And All People says as if parades were the holiday, not annoying enough, now protesters barged into them. Yeah, I like I said, I've never had a stomach for parades. Even as a child, I thought they were dull. I was never interested in seeing a parade, but I'd rather see the same old dull, goofy parades that they used to do than all the politicized garbage. It's not necessary. Rodney says the one thing I've noticed about all extremist Islamist climate protesters, far left, pro-transmogrified, they all take themselves very seriously. No, they want you to take them very seriously. I don't know how seriously they take themselves, but they sure want everyone else to fold up on them. And one more here from Armored. He says, why do activists and protests usually get away with blocking traffic? Isn't that illegal? It should be. It should be. But speaking of Thanksgiving, and since we're in New York anyways, you want to take care of your migrants, don't you? This is something else that's gotten a lot of backlash, courtesy of the mayor's office. This is from the Independent News. Migrants in New York receiving free turkeys ahead of Thanksgiving. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? And they got preference. I think that what's really going to piss everybody off is they got preference over the regular New Yorkers. As we start digging into this one, see a traditional Thanksgiving meal here. I've always hated Thanksgiving food, stuffing, sweet potatoes, turkey. I hated that stuff. My wife makes fantastic mashed potatoes, though, by the way. Getting into the article, it says the recent news of migrants in New York receiving free turkeys for Thanksgiving has made headlines all over social media. However, low-income residents of public housing in New York City voiced concerns as they find themselves competing with newly arrived migrants for free Thanksgiving turkeys, straining already limited public resources. Oh, yeah, the citizens get a back seat. For the liberals, this might seem as something positive, where inclusivity is coming through and migrants are learning the American culture. They don't give a shit about this culture. Are you kidding me? If they cared about the culture, they would become citizens the right way instead of bogarting their way into the country. And they don't know anything about Thanksgiving, nor do they care. Seriously. Anyways, back to the article. Where am I? I lost my place. The strain on resources is palatable for low-income New Yorkers. The city's recent response included providing a $15 gift card to public housing residents who lacked cooking gas for months. So since they gave away the food packages to, I'm assuming here, since they gave away the food packages to the migrants, their solution was to give the people who should have gotten it a $15 gift card instead. Mayor Eric Adams announced significant budget cuts for New Yorkers due to the city's allocation of nearly $1.5 billion in the past year alone for newly arrived migrants, projecting an estimated $12 billion spending on migrants by next year's end. This situation further exacerbates the challenges faced by locals already grappling with financial constraints. And there he is. Hey, Adams, how you doing? You indicted yet? He's getting there. He's got investigations going around the clock now. Where are we here? The viewpoint's bouncing around. I hate when it does this. It's the pop-up ads throwing the thing off. The viewpoint of this whole situation is rather bleak. Ex-users are unhappy with the fact that budget cuts will be placed to New York City's essential services in order to fund the migrants in the city. Furthermore, others are blaming the current government for doing so. Crime in the city may increase if the police force is reduced. Crime in the city's already increased, including scooter thefts. We covered that specifically a couple of weeks back because they are there's a massive crime wave of scooter and electric bike thefts in New York since the migrants started coming in, and they're the ones doing it. Sorry, you can get mad if you want to. I know somebody's going to be offended, but they're the ones doing it. You go to any of these hotels or shelters where all these migrants have been staying, and you'll find an ocean of scooters with the license plates ripped off. So, gee, I wonder who stole them. Urban says no one was seriously hurt in the chicken belt incident. Okay. Armand says, why do activists and protesters usually get away with blocking traffic? I read that. I don't know. I don't know why, but they should get a bad charge for it. Bingo made it. Glad you could make it today. Flukeman says, you're giving them what they want by unchaining and ungluing them, getting arrested at the grand prize. Stop giving them attention. Eventually, they'll get bored and go away. And Keisha says, I saw today where they're dropping off African migrants who don't speak English in Georgia. Oh, Christ. That's a mess. That's a mess. Going back to it, they're not handled roughly enough when they get arrested that they don't want to go through that again. Now, back during the women's suffrage movement, one of the tricks that the women's suffrage protesters used to use, and I'm going into the UK right now. This is back in England, back at the turn of the last century when they were trying to get the right to vote and all sorts of things like that, or whatever they were doing, women's suffrage. They would be extremely violent. They would throw rocks and bricks and break windows and throw and attack people and attack police officers and stuff. And then when you'd arrest them, suddenly they got dainty. Oh, please. Oh, I'm just a woman. How can you handle me like this? And then when they got arrested and they get pretty decent prison sentences at a time where you did not want to be in jail. Think about the time period. They would refuse to eat, and because they wouldn't eat, they would be released because it was bad press that they were starving in the jails. Until the British government came up with the solution of giving them feeding tubes if they refused to eat and forcing food into them. Then they stopped going to jail. They didn't want to get arrested anymore after that happened. You got to make it uncomfortable for them. Urban says the migrants who got a free turkey will start marching and screaming against the Thanksgiving holiday soon enough. And Henry says they voted for this. Yes, they did. Helter says illegal aliens don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. It's a U.S. holiday. Correct. Illegal aliens don't celebrate Thanksgiving. If it's free, they'll show up in large numbers regardless. Correct. And All People says 99% of Americans happily celebrate Thanksgiving. Ignore leftist paid activists. They do not represent our tribes. We love Thanksgiving. It represents a time of peace and unity in America's past. And $15 will not cover the cost of a turkey or groceries. That is correct. And All People, I am talking about activists in particular. I have an issue with activists anyways, because an activist, including Native Indian activists, which can be some of the worst ones. And I've told my story about my confrontation with one back in Kansas a few times, but they're some of the worst ones. Fluke Man says 670,000 migrants came to the UK this year that you know of. And All People said Airhead Adams is now being accused and investigated on charges. Moron was placed in office without proper election as a useful idiot. But yeah, we've been talking about that too, because he's under investigation big time. Mayor Adams, as well as his campaign manager and a couple of other people that are really close to him, are under investigation, have had their offices and their homes searched. Adams himself had his phone and his laptop confiscated by the FBI. There's a lot going on there. As we move around, I want to, and still in New York, we're going to stick around New York a little bit longer. Just long enough, and this article is from the New York Post, to talk about Jamal Bowman again. And this is important. Now, you all know who Jamal Bowman is. Jamal Bowman is the New York representative who pulled the fire alarm. He pulled the fire alarm and pretended like he thought he was opening the door. But it's been shown that it's a lie, and you can see the video clip right there. He takes the signs down, pulls the alarm, and then takes off. Passes, I think they said 7 Capital City police in the building. Said nothing to them. Hey, the alarm is my fault. Can you stop it? I didn't mean to do that. Whatever. Say something. He did it on purpose. He got a slap on the wrist. He got a slap on the wrist for basically breaking the law. Because if I did that, I'd have gotten 5 years. Okay, maybe 5 years, 3 with good behavior. But he got I think it was $1,000 fine. I could be mistaken. It might have been a little more, but it was a menial fine. Plus, he has to write a letter of apology to the Capital City Police, like they give a crap. Okay. Now, the House Ethics Committee still has to review that. Only they're not going to, which is what the article's about. And it says House Ethic Panel votes against Representative Jamal Bowman's fire alarm inquiry. So they're going to throw it out. A couple of comments here real quick. Urban says in British Columbia, $15. Canadian will get you a small block of butter, a dozen eggs, and bread if it's on sale. Thomas says 2 million Palestinians in the EU. Yeah, they'll be throwing bricks and rocks before you know what happens. They love throwing stuff. Cruising says they give students that pull the fire alarm more of a penalty. And remember, he was the principal of a school. He knows what the hell a fire alarm looks like. No problem, all people. He said he meant that that particular comment for Keisha Martins, but that's okay. Urban says, I see some merchandising opportunities here. A Jamal Bowman action figure. Press the button and guess what happens? Nothing will happen, apparently. The article says the House Ethics Committee has opted not to open an investigation into Representative Jamal Bowman's over his pulling of a fire alarm in a Capitol Hill office building while the lower chamber was preparing to vote on a bill to avert a government shutdown. The panel decided to set up an investigative subcommittee or issue a report after Bowman copped to a misdemeanor last month for wrongfully triggering the alarm on September 30th, according to a Wednesday statement by Chairman Michael Guest. On October 26, Bowman pleaded guilty to one count of falsely pulling the alarm. Falsely pulling the alarm? What the hell does that mean? And agreed to pay, I was right, a $1,000 fine as part of an agreement with D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb that will see the charges dismissed after 3 months. The House Ethics Committee voted against launching an inquiry into Jamal Bowman for pulling the fire alarm in a Capitol Hill office building. The House Ethics, come on, don't bounce around on me. Yeah, it bounced. Hold on a second while I find my place. He also pledged to write a personal apology letter to the U.S. Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger, which I also said. The House Ethics Panel Chairman Michael Guest declined to set up an investigative subcommittee or issue a report after Bowman copped to a misdemeanor. I'm thankful for the quick resolution from the D.C. Attorney General's office. Yeah, I bet you are. On this issue, and grateful to the United States Capitol Police General Counsel's Office, agreed I did not obstruct nor intend to instruct any House vote or proceedings. Bowman, aged 57, said in a statement after the plea was announced. He damn well did so intend to obstruct a House vote and proceeding. That was the intention. Why else do you pull the signs down and then pull an alarm and take off? And then where were the signs? Because when they showed him in the other videos, he sure didn't have them. Where did he ditch them? Did he put them in his backpack? Did he put them in the trash? How come he didn't speak to any of the Capital City police that he passed after the alarm went off? He absolutely did that to be an obstruction. I believe it. You got a slap on the wrist for something we'd all go to prison for. Where are we here? Fluke Man says AOC still made excuses for setting off the fire alarm, but couldn't come up with the real expectations. And All People says, why does Bowman whine about reparations? His family arrived after slavery ended. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. We talked about that yesterday because he claims the reason that Biden is slipping in the polls is because he's not having a real conversation about reparations. And then he did that little shitty Black Power salute where if I could find the picture of that, because he just looked ridiculous in trying to pull off that salute. See if there's a picture of that I can pull up. His little fake Black Power salute that he did for the photo op, trying to act like he's one of the boys. Is that him? No, that's a different one. But he posed for the Black Power salute in a photo op, and it just looked so phony. This is a different one. Word, brother. Word to your mother. He's such a fraud. Henry says, as always, nothing happens to these clowns. Two-tier justice system is alive and well. And Dragon says, Bowman paid off the House Ethics Committee to get off the hook, I bet. I'm sure there's some kind of a deal going on behind the scenes. Something that you and I wouldn't be privy to. Unfortunately, like I said, it would be major jail time for any of us if that had happened to us. Now, we talked about NEOM yesterday. Let me set this up. NEOM, of course, is the line in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's mega city, or Mega City 1. Yeah, that isn't that what it was in Judge Dredd? Mega City 1. This is their Mega City 1. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this up. As somebody had asked about it yesterday, I don't think they're in here today. I have not seen them chime in anyways, about how are they going to advertise that? Commercial advertisement for NEOM, for the line, the Saudi Arabia 200-mile building that they want people to live in. They have several commercials advertising this, trying to make it appealing. And I'm going to show one of them. I chose the shortest one. This one's only about 2 minutes long. And there it is, popped up on the screen for you to see. And for those of you who can't see, you can listen to it, but we're going to talk about it after the fact because it's contradictory to what it is that NEOM is trying to accomplish. The commercial doesn't fit. And see if you can catch what's wrong with this as you watch this. I'll go ahead and run it now. Here we go.
You can look at these ancient hills and see nothing. Or you can see nothing to hold you back. No set ways of thinking, no restrictions, no divisions, no excuses. Just endless potential. This is the blank page you need to write humanity's next chapter. NEOM. Over 25,000 square kilometers of inspiration, with room for your biggest ideas. A part of the world set aside for those who want to change the world. A land created to free people from stress. A place where pioneers and thinkers and doers can exchange ideas and get things done. A startup the size of a country that will change the way we live and work forever. Healthier, happier, with more time for the things that really matter. A truly global culture from every place and background you can imagine that can show the rest of the planet how it's done. With energy that flows from the sun and wind, neighborhoods that can feed and clean themselves, technologies that make life everything it can be. This is where we can prepare together for the next era of human progress.
It's almost over.
Some will look at these ancient hills and see nothing.
Can you hear okay?
But the rest of the world will know that this is where a new way of living began.
Could you all hear that all right? I don't know how well the sound was coming through. And Thomas says 200 miles of ghetto. Bingo says they restricted his They restricted your comment again? Cruising says sounds like they're advertising what most people already have, but an effective criminal justice system. And Dragon says NEOM sounds great on paper, but when it's actually built, it'll probably turn into more of a dystopia. The whole deal, hyper surveillance, police state, increased divide between rich and poor. And Spectre says he can hear fine. Okay. Helter says there's a lot of emphasis on how it won't be for everyone. It'll probably be a bunch of rich, powerful people with the rest of us to fend for ourselves. And Helter says something tells me they won't care much what happens to the rest of the world. It looks like a giant gated community. Here's the thing. And for those of you who are listening and not able to see that commercial, you were only able to hear it. Everything they showed is not what NEOM can provide, because everything in the video was outdoors. People riding in hot air balloons, people parasailing, people running on the beach, driving down highways, climbing mountains, all outdoor activities, swimming in the ocean, all things that you cannot have if you live in the line, because it's one gigantic building. And the idea is that people don't go outside. It's an open air roof with the housing built into the walls, with like a central area in the middle with like some trees and stuff. And there's no vehicles. They showed cars. There's no vehicles in there. There's a two-way subway that's going to run under it. So it's sectioned off into blocks because it's an 8-minute city. So if you lived on one end of one section, it would take you 8 minutes to walk to the other section. And if you wanted to go beyond that, you'd have to go under the city and get in the subway. Those people will not be outside ever. They had people parachuting and parasailing. Where the hell are you going to parachute in Neom? You can't do any of that. So they're selling you that concept of total freedom while sealing you up into a box with nowhere to go. It's in the middle of the desert. It's 120, 130 degrees outside, and the building is mirrored. It's going to amplify that heat. Everything around that building is going to be dead. So, oh my God. Urban says, have you heard about the mother suing Henry County, Georgia school administrators? Her daughter was stabbed 14 times by a known school bully with a knife. The teachers did nothing about it for a week. Really? No, I have not heard that. Thomas says exactly. Delo says it's going to be like the Hunger Games. All People says Black Power Fist was imported from Caribbean islands. Sent by Lyndon B. Johnson to replace the civil rights movement. Flukeman says you can do everything that's shown in the video. Have you seen the Truman Show? Yeah, a virtual headset maybe. Spectre says I remember some movies that were like that. Logan's Run is one. Exactly. And that's what it's going to be, because the idea is you don't have a reason to leave. You stay inside the building. You need a passport to get out. You have to have a pass. And then where are you going to go? The line is in the middle of nowhere. They set it up that way on purpose. They've displaced tens of thousands of indigenous people that lived in that area, burned their villages, arrested them, threw them out. The activists who were fighting on behalf of or trying to expose what was going on are dead. What are you going to do? Urban says, regarding 15-minute cities, it sounds like a cruise ship, but without the cruise and without money and without any disembarking privileges. Basically, All People says that city sounds like a gilded Hades. Yeah, gilded cage. But it was asked about yesterday. Somebody wanted to see one of their advertisements. That's what the advertisement looks like, but it's extremely misleading. Oh, it'll be great. You can exercise your dreams. It's all inclusive. There's no restrictions. I very seriously doubt that. I very seriously doubt there's no restrictions. They would have to have a very, very strict and controlled environment to manage as many people are going to be in there. And let me see. And talking about Neom, it says here they have that they've relocated or evicted more than 20,000 people from the Hoitat tribe who are native to that area. And I'm trying to find out how many people are going to fit in there. Oh, wow. This is going to knock you out. Hold on. Let me get this open here so that you can see what I'm looking at. And I'll read it, of course, because I know not everybody is able to see. They project a minimum of 2 million people that they're going to move into that building. And they're going to call them Neomians. Neomians. $500 billion future city would have millions of people by 2030 within the next decade. He expects 2 million Neomians to live in the city. So it's going to hold more than 2 million people. 2 million people in one building. That's going to be great because we all know how well housing projects work out, right? And All People says Logan's Run is a great movie, a classic. We watched it in a class. Logan's Run is a great movie with Michael York. Michael York starred in Logan's Run, and there was a failed attempt at a weekly TV show. I think it was on ABC. I could be wrong. It only lasted like 13 or 15 episodes. It was not as good as the film. Let's just put it that way. Spectre says more than likely you'll be chipped and the rest that comes with that. Yeah, because they would have to very, very seriously police and monitor an operation like that to keep it under control, or else it could get out of hand very quickly. 2 million people in one building. Mega City 1, people. You're going to need Judge Dredd now. That's what you're going to need. Wow. That is insane. I couldn't imagine. And somebody was asking about that too. They were like, what's it going to be like growing up in there? They won't know the difference. And Logan's Run is a great example of that because they didn't know the difference. There was a handful, a small group of so-called rebels that wanted to get outside. But the reason they wanted to leave Logan's Run was because people were recycled when they turned 30. When you turned 30 years old, that was your last year. And they were chipped. Remember, they had the little jewel on the back of their hand, or was it the palm of their hand? It was in the palm of their hand. And when the jewel changed color, it meant that they had turned 30, and so that was the end of their time. And then they went to carnival, right? They went to carnival, and carnival was basically euthanization in mass of people that had turned 30. So they didn't know anything was wrong. The reason other people were trying to get out of the dome is because they were scared of dying, not because they thought anything was out there. So yeah, people who grow up in something like that, they won't know the difference. Let me see here. Thomas says, why don't move to Gaza? Is it the same as the line? No, well, they're not going to put people from the Gaza in the line because nobody wants them. That's why they're in Gaza. They're all evicted from Gaza. They're all evicted from all over the Middle East and ended up in Gaza. But I wouldn't want to live anywhere in the Middle East because it's a mess. Fluke Man says, what are the things you're not allowed to own living in the building? Firearms, hard copy dictionaries, what else? That's a great question because I'm sure there will be a lot of restrictions. I bet you will not be able to arm yourself. Urban says it reminds me of Plato's Cave, the allegory of the cave from Plato's Republic. You got to read the whole book, though, and it's like that big, a collaboration of stories related to it. Allegory of the Cave is just like one chapter, but it makes the point. It makes the point. Henry says, will there be population control inside? Sooner or later, the population will grow. Yeah, they've got to have some way to manage it. They probably have some kind of restriction whereby you're not allowed to have more than a certain number of children, kind of like what they used to do in China. They did it in China for 20 years before lifting the restriction, especially if you gave birth to a female. All People says Charlie Angel's actress has a cameo in the film Logan's Run. Yeah, she was in the plastic surgeon's office where you lay down on the laser table. And Urban says it was called Carousel. I thought so. Spectre says no radical mindsets, no free thinking. No, obey, obey, obey. Yeah, you got to toe the line if you're in a place like that. You have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to run to. How hard would it be for them to find out that you're up to no good? Everybody would be under constant surveillance. That's the only way that they could manage it. All People says the city sounds like it would soon become like the Twilight Zone episode called The Obsolete Man with Burgess Meredith, and he was the librarian. Is that the one? And they were going to execute him for refusing to denounce wanting to be a librarian. And he chose his method of execution to be a bomb, if I remember correctly. And he made the judge beg for in the name of God to be let out, because he tricked him into his apartment and locked him in. Nature Nerd says Logan's Run is their food source for the 30-year-olds that get eliminated. I believe, I'm trying to remember the book. I think they end up as fertilizer for the food. I could be thinking of something else, though. Fluke Man says no dystopia books and movies. We wouldn't want to get any ideas. And Urban says, let's not forget about Brave New World. Yeah, that's another good one. Brave New World is another must read. And Jack Barnes has made it. Glad you could make it today, Jack. Spectre says he'd rather live in the only game I play, Fallout 4. Fallout. But yeah, it doesn't look to me like it's anything that's advertised. If you're comfortable with just schlepping around, because it's like a live, work, play environment, you're not expected to ever want to actually go anywhere. So you sit in your block, in your section of their city for the rest of your life. And you toe the line. There'll be no room for welfare because you've got to contribute. It's a biosphere. It's a biosphere. I don't know how it's going to look, but they're selling it pretty hard. And it will open the door for other countries to try to copy the model. And I think it's particularly interesting, as I've pointed out, because of what they've done to the indigenous tribes there. But nobody cares about that. They'll scream and yell about Gaza and what's going on down in Gaza. Oh, it's genocide, and how could you? And people in the Middle East, they do this to each other constantly. They kill each other constantly, displace each other constantly, burn their villages, kill their children, rape their women. It never ends. They all do it. But you never hear about it unless Israel's in there somewhere. Think about it. Because Saudi Arabia sure did mess up all of those tribes on purpose, and it never made the press. It never made the press. All People says the city will likely be as kind to residents as the aliens were to humans in the Twilight Zone, called to serve man, except they'll turn themselves into slaves. The Canamites, instead of the other thing. I think that was the Canamites or Canamites. I'm trying to remember. And the guy who played, was it Lurch from the Addams Family, was one of the main aliens. Cruising says, I'm sure this sounds appealing to people who already are shut-ins and want to be away from people on welfare. Yeah, professional gamers, people who play RPGs like 16 hours a day, and they got like bags under their eyes that go all the way down to their nostrils. Bingo says, I don't get how people are stupid enough to fall for this. Even when I was younger, I still saw through this shit. Bingo, people aren't that smart. Most people are not that smart. Even the best of us are not that smart. I'm not that smart. I'm just better off than a lot of others. But most people are not smart and are easily fooled, unfortunately. And Nature Nerd says no one cares about Syria or the Sudan civil war. No, they don't care. They don't care about that. And Jack says, think the war in Israel could lead to them using nuclear weapons. Not directly. For an EMP effect, maybe, but not directly. Spectre says, live, work on homestead, work with other homesteaders, create supply lines with other homesteaders, get off grid 100%. If you are able to, I recommend it. And Nature Nerd says, no one cares about Armenia, Azerbaijan war either. Nope. And All People says the alien in that Twilight Zone to serve man episode was actually a real giant in real life, and he was a devout born-again Christian. He still wore platforms, though, to make him taller. As we move around here, this is something that's flying under the radar in the news, and it sparked a lot of backlash. People are very upset about this. And this is the Western Journal. Transmogrified swimmer smashes college records after switching to the women's team. And there he is. It says Megan Cortez Fields, a swimmer for Ramapo College in New Jersey, broke the school records after 3 relatively nondescript years on the swimming team, and people are furious. The reason for the anger stems from the fact that those 3 nondescript years occurred while Cortez Fields, who was born a male, swam for the men's team. The new school record, which is a women's record, Cortez Fields broke that record over the weekend at the Cougar Splash International, which was held in Dallas, Pennsylvania. According to Fox News, the swimmer set a school record in the 100-yard butterfly when Cortez Fields took first place with a time of 57.22 seconds. Cortez Fields also took first place in the 200-yard individual medley and also secured second place finish in the 200-yard butterfly. It would have been quite the successful weekend for Cortez Fields, but the transmogrified controversy overshadowed everything else. Case in point, Riley Gaines, a fierce advocate for protecting the sanctity of women's sports and a dedicated college swimmer herself, swiftly called out Ramapo College for celebrating Cortez Fields' tainted accomplishments on Instagram. So basically, this person, Cortez Fields, okay, and how many years was it? 3 years. Has been at this college for more than 3 years now. Swam on the men's team for 3 years and never placed. Never won anything, never accomplished anything. Suddenly decides he's a chick, joins the women's team and breaks the college records. And the college is celebrating this. Jack says, wonder if Israel will retake Gaza and put an end to Gaza self-governing. Well, allowing them to self-govern is when this all started, which they never wanted to do in the first place, but they got pressure from the UN in the United States and from Europe. And bowing to that constantly is what led to this, because Israel has been very westernized. Keisha says they want to be on the women's team because they can't win on the men's. Exactly. Fluke Man says because the female swimmers didn't have enough confidence. What a sad excuse some people are. And Helta says the disgraceful administration of college sports is the problem. The athletes know the real records belong to real women. Records only matter if the record setter is respected by fellow athletes. Youch. And Nature Nerd says right now Christians are being killed, persecuted or displaced by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Yes, they are. And that's not being covered in the news, is it? Because who cares? We're talking about Israel. And there's a huge difference between Israeli Jews and the ones that live in the United States. When you're out there, you can't tell them apart from the Arabs. The ones that are in the United States, they've been here too long, and their color has faded. And I know that sounds crazy, but think about it. Well, most of the time, your exposure to the sun is what causes you to be darker. When you've been generations in a country that doesn't have as intense sunlight, the level of melanin start to drop off. That's why a lot of people who are in the United States who came from places where they had a darker or richer color, it's a lot lighter in American people of color than where they originally came from. If I explain that correctly. Dragon says the record should have an asterisk mark explaining the record was achieved by a biological male. But yeah, looks proud of himself, doesn't he? Failure as a swimmer. Managed to stay on the team. Wasn't good enough. Switched to women's sports. Broke records. Won events. Got a couple of medals. Isn't that nice? Must be nice. And I see Stefan has joined us. Says happy Thanksgiving. Yes, indeed. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a good holiday, actually. Hope you make the best of it. I don't know how many people actually try to celebrate it. For most people, it's just a day off, which is fine. But yeah, if you do that sort of thing, I hope you have a good time anyways. Thanksgiving's never been my bag. I've never really had one anyways. My mother didn't celebrate any holidays. So there you go. But yeah, this is disgraceful. And until more people, and we're starting to see it, but we're starting to see it where women are refusing to participate. We've seen a lot of that in the judo championships, the American Grappling Association, and another martial arts group now. The females have refused to participate if there's a transmogrified male. And also that in the UK, it was a pool player, correct? Wouldn't play. Said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not playing against the dude. And they're right. They shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to. Fluke Man says, off topic here. Apparently, Trump's losing his memory because he mentioned Obama is the president on several occasions. I wonder if he's not being sarcastic on the slide by implying Obama's still in charge because of Biden, and he thinks that they call it Biden instead of Biden or Obama. Urban says most Jewish Israelis are fifth generation on the land. Many of the newer ones are from Russia and Europe, so they're lighter skinned in general. But the Middle Eastern ones, you wouldn't tell them apart from their counterparts. Cruising says, I'm curious as to why a male would have a natural advantage over females at billiards. I get it in most sports, but that one's odd. Yeah, I wondered about that myself, Cruising. Like, I'm like, does it make a difference in playing pool? I'd have to look that up. A good way to do that would be to look at the stats on male and female competition scoring and to see if men do better than females in scoring, which is an interesting point. And that's something I mean to look up, and just out of curiosity after that happened. But yeah, I've never heard of a mixed competition with males and females in billiards, now that I think about it. Not that I follow that so closely, but you know what I mean. Keisha says, I don't know how Biden could get through a second term. He's so impaired. Well, we'll see. I mean, he got 81 million votes. He's the most popular U.S. president in history. In history. 81 million votes, Keisha. You can't deny it. Cruising says, you think billiards, bowling, darts, marksmanship would all have co-ed leads at a base? I don't know. But that's interesting. Thomas says tennis. No, not tennis either. Because I had heard the argument given that I know they do have doubles with mixed teams, but somebody had made the remark, some celebrity had made the remark that who is it, the Williams sisters could beat any guy, but they did that challenge, and the person who beat them was a guy who placed 203rd in the men's category, if I remember this correctly. I'll try to remember to look that up as well. I mean, he wasn't even in the top 10 in men's tennis, and he beat the sister that he went against. Cruising says a retired middle-aged drunk beat one of the Williams sisters. Was it? I remember because even in tennis, one-on-one, I know they do have a mixed doubles thing, but I don't follow that so closely. I don't watch I don't really watch sports anyways. I don't, especially if it's organized sports. My wife and I both like the strongman competitions. We'll watch that, or competitions where it's obstacle courses and things. And I used to like watching American Ninja Warrior, but I don't anymore because it got way too political, too much fluff, and I can't stand that. Fluke Man says, if chess, puzzles, and etc. competitions are separated by gender, how many transmogrified women would join the women's teams. Too many. Urban says Serena Williams herself said that her own husband would be able to win against her with ease. There you go. All people said the U.S. Oval Office resident Joe Biden is clearly faking his dementia to avoid jail for his treason. Yeah, and again, I've speculated on that before that it could be for the purpose of plausible deniability. Could be. One more here. Bingo says the current or previous, not sure which doctor for the White House said yesterday Biden did not have the mental capacity to run another term. But hey, 61 million votes don't lie. 61 million votes, ladies and gentlemen. Why would you want to throw out sweet old, cuddly old, happy old, trustworthy old Uncle Joe? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to put him out in the street, make the guy homeless? This article is from the Messenger, and this comes as a bit of a relief, actually. This is some good news. IRS radically dials back new rule to report Venmo, PayPal transactions over $600. Because remember, it's not just PayPal and Venmo, it's eBay, it's all the selling sites. Everybody. If you earned more than $600 in a year from the selling on an online platform, like if I had some junk I wanted to get rid of on eBay, I had some old books or some lamps or something, and I made more than $600, I'd have to fill out a W-2. And they've rolled that back now because I guess they've realized they can't track all of that. It's too much. Plus, it's a lie anyways. This was a lie perpetrated by I don't care where it originally came from, but it wasn't ratified until Biden. And the idea is it's supposed to help them to make the rich pay their fair share. And I'm like, how is it making the rich pay their fair share if I want to sell a coffee table on what, Facebook Marketplace, whatever, and then I have to fill it out on my taxes? How's that fair? How's that making the rich pay? That makes no sense. It's a lie. So the article states, Internal Revenue Service on Tuesday dramatically scaled back its plan to require e-commerce platforms, including PayPal, Venmo, and Etsy, to send tax forms to customers who have more than 600 transactions in a year. The new threshold is $5,000 in payments for goods and services, a level that casual online sellers of sneakers and concert tickets who are worried about the potential of IRS scrutiny will at least partially cheer. Under the old 600 level, some people who resold tickets this year to Taylor Swift's Era concert for several $1,000s would have need to report their profits as taxable income, with documents from the payment platforms showing how they were paid. The IRS is also delaying the unpopular rule again. It was due to go into force this year after already being postponed, but instead will be phased in starting in 2024. That means Americans will first report transactions on their federal returns in 2025. The threshold for 2023 will be $20,000, a level set before the new rule was proposed in 2021, which leaves many Americans who cashed in selling Swift tickets in the clear. They're using Swift tickets as an example, but whatever. It's anything. 20,000 has been the rule since as far back as eBay started doing online transactions in the 90s. Okay? That's been the rule for a long time. That's fair enough because most people aren't going to sell that much. Most people on eBay, on Mercari, on whatever selling platform, Facebook Marketplace, it's casual selling. It's just extra stuff they're trying to get rid of, or they're in need of cash really quick. And Keisha says, good. Yeah, one good thing. Dilo says, happy Thanksgiving. Dilo, weren't you in here? Urban says, I always wondered how sites like Shopify work for small sellers collecting tax and declaring on year end. The rule was that if you sold under 20,000, you didn't have to declare it because it was just assumed you were getting rid of junk. And that's more than fair. That makes sense to me. Nature Nerd says $600 is making the poor pay their fair share. Exactly. And All People says the IRS is full of it. They know that the majority of the rich do not even use eBay, Etsy, and so on to make extra cash for any other reason. And Delo says I left for a phone call. Okay, Delo, I understand. I just remember seeing your name earlier is all. But that is a relief, although in my opinion 5,000 is still too high. 20 was fine. Most people aren't even going to reach that. And also when you sell when you sell that way, and you could be selling at a loss. Let's say I bought a radio and it cost me $200 and I sold it on eBay and I made 50 and I'm getting taxed for that $50 sale, but it's a total loss, but I can't prove what I paid for that radio. And if I have a bunch of stuff and I try to itemize it, I'm risking getting audited. And who the hell wants to deal with that? Who the hell wants to deal with that? Anyways, we're at the top of the hour. We're over the hour again. That's okay, though. I don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I know my wife's in there cooking. She's a good cook. I love her. But anyways, again, you have been listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and that is at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, or at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Please do find me there. And with that, I'll go ahead and sign out. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will be doing this again tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good holiday.